I was rolling strong with the minister back then. I came in here and Rafu said, Kemet. That was at least 20 at least. I wasn't no more than about 19 back then. And Rafu still providing the service to the people.
It's been great teaming up 20 years ago, 1994. You know, in terms of like for this whole time period, this whole concept of providing a cultural shop, examples of jewelry designs from the ancient Nile Valley, all of these things being resurrected and brought back and made available was all done because of the mind of this brother right here. And it was really a great pleasure and a learning experience for a brother from my background to come and join Rafu and this team, because I got really re-educated, really re-educated about the people by working in a business dedicated to the people. Talking about of the people, for the people, and by the people.
Tag Rafu, them bangles. Woo!
I ain't pull out them bangles. You know, I got the bangles hidden, Dave.
Well, I'm glad to be home, and I really don't want to leave.
Okay, that sound real. That sound real.
I really don't want to leave, Rob.
Well, that's a good thing. Wake up, America. So it's always easy to give you something that's hands-on and easy for you to work with, and that's one of the basics. So I mean, I wouldn't change up. Even if you ask me now, I would go right back to hands-on material that you can be able to pass on to other younger people or people who feel that they need to be conscious or conscious around. Gotta have something called the food for thought.
I was doing my card and I was going to become some kind of teacher.
Okay.
We're waiting on that to be revealed to me.
Well, I carry a program with me, which is a teacher's program, or what many people call a teacher's kit, homeschool. And if you're homeschooling, it's interesting because I have a package that I present to people when they say, well, my kid is not really learning the way I would like for my kid to learn, and I always ask people, do you homeschool your kids? And they say no. I say, well, hey, we have homeschool packages. And this is one of my homeschool packages. This is called the Education Power Pack. Now, this is one of the most powerful Power Pack education material and books, and the transition of all this material that you see, everything that you can count in here.
I like it for the younger children, which is, what it's designed for, but...
Well, when we think about younger people, I usually do the parent resource or the treasure within, and this is another one that gives you all the information, introducing you to what they call the Sankofa. You just got to introduce them to ancient Kemet just a little while ago.
Right. Yeah, I like to follow the progression and start at Kemet and move. That's a nice way to build that for the children.
And each table of contents and things that you reach shows you all the different Ndinka symbols as you see. In Chin Chin, Sankofa, Jiyami. And you did that.
Oh, man.
Both of y'all did it.
Hey.
How you doing,
oh, man. Seriously, big feeling, feeling every bit my age. I understand all the jokes we used to make about old people.
Right.
Now I am one.
What, you just about 70?
Yeah. Yes, 70. I mean, that's still relatively young for this time period, but man, the physique, things you do as a youth, basketball all them years, you know, and all that stuff, run up and down the hardwood floors and the asphalt courts outside. You know, pain. A lot of pain.
Way on the legs.
But yeah. But that's primarily my only complaints. Otherwise, I'm doing all right, feeling pretty good, still got good spirits, and still feeling good about teaching.
Beautiful, beautiful.
I feel still good about teaching. Spent a lot of years gathering a lot of information. So, you know, part of when you're in the sunset chapters of your life, one of the best things you can do is pass it on as such. So I'm trying to spend some time writing about those experiences so I can leave something that somebody might pick up on and move forward with it. The greatest thing.
For those that are interested in credentials, you went to Howard University, am I correct?
I went to several universities, yeah.
Okay.
yeah, I started at Howard. You know, I came out of
degree in?
My degrees in philosophy and history. While in the military, you might as well say I got a degree in civil engineering. You know, as such. I found one of the statements of Malcolm X. In fact, it was because of my military experience and something that Malcolm said that made me change from being an engineer and an architectural student and coming back and deciding to major in history. And that is, you know, the whole idea of, you know, like we left our minds in Africa. You know, say something about, yeah, hey, Africans, somebody objected. And he said, yeah, you ain't nothing but Africans, no matter what you call it yourself. And that was radical back at the time that Malcolm said that. But my first assignment overseas was in Tripoli, Libya. So I was stationed there for 18 months. And when I first went into Cairo and went in the museum, just because, you know, as a student, you hear about this famous museum in Cairo. I mean, I walked in there in the 1960s not knowing that the ancient Kemetans were black people. You know, I tell folks that during my era, I remember a set of encyclopedias that I got. It was called the World Book of Knowledge, right? And every picture in that set of encyclopedias that was addressing quote-unquote ancient Egypt were pictures or drawings from the time period when the Greeks were in Alexandria. So all of the images were of white people dressed in Egyptian clothing. You know, and that's all I had seen. Once I got there, it says I was going into the museum at that time. The bust of Amenhotep III was sitting up front. And the very first thing that was obvious, hey, this is a black man. You know, why is it that I don't know that one of the Egyptian pharaohs was a black man? And as I further traversed through the museum, of course, and then traveled throughout the land, of course, I found out the people were black. And that was quite an awakening for me, thinking that I was smart and had learned something, you know, while going through school. But I found myself out in the world, and one of my very first experiences was finding out how miseducated I had become. Therefore, I set about going back to school and majored in history and philosophy.
Tell me, so when did Dr. Ben come into your life?
Well, Doc Ben first came into my life in the early 70s when he published the book, The Black Man of the Nile. When I first saw it, grabbed it and read it, I mean, I was very, very enthusiastic about reading, finally, a book that was addressing what I had seen with my own eyes. Later on, Doc came into my life, I guess, in the most intricate connection was two ways. One was in the organization of ASCAP, the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations. Every year they have a conference, and traveling to the conference, you know, I got a chance not only to hear Doc present a paper, but to sit down in a social environment and, you know, talk to Doc, ask in-depth questions and get non-theatrical answers, I would call it. The second set of circumstances was back in the 90s. A very good friend of mine, Dr. Denise Phelps, teaching at Howard, decided to start a work-study group off campus of everyday people who wanted to study and learn more without going to college to get an advanced degree. So she started a group called Breaking the Chains, meaning breaking the chains of psychological slavery. And she was bringing Doc Ben in, and at the time, Brother Rafu and I were, I'm trying to remember, I think we were still at the Jewels of Baton across the street, right, before we moved into the House of Kemet. But at the Jewels of Baton, she brought a little flyer by, and I started talking to her about Doc Ben and Black Men of the Nile. And she asked me, well, would I agree for the weekends when they didn't have Doc coming in to speak, would I come, and work with the students, what they were learning. And then over time, I joined her in the effort in Break the Chains, and Doc would come in on weekends. We would pick him up at the airport, sometimes at the train station, and I got a chance to talk with him. The same thing after the lecture, where we took him to for his accommodations in the evening, we would sit down and talk. So seeing him on both of those fronts, I got a chance to learn a lot from Doc. In '98, my last trip to Kemet, I went with him. And again, being in the Nile Valley with him, having the chance to ask questions at the scene of the activity was very enlightening and informing to me. We have a bond, we made a bond that has impacted me the last 40 years of my life, as such. So I'm, very, felt very lucky. The same with Dr. John Henry Clark, because again, in that same context, I first met Clark again at ASCAT. And again, when we started bringing people here to for our weekend sessions with the community, Dr. Clark was would often come down with Doc Ben.
What's up, bro?
Therefore, I had a chance to, again, question him. Again, the great experience was sitting down, hearing them debate about the 18th and 19th dynasties, which one was really the better, was the best dynasty, where was most of the accomplishment made.
Dr. Clark and Dr. Ben debating?
Yeah. Doc Ben is the 19th dynasty. He loved the 19th dynasty, that of the Ramesses dynasty group. John Henry Clark was enamored by the 18th dynasty pharaohs. Again, the brothers who resurrected, after they had been for whatever reason, a break in the continuous line. Like the ancient civilization wasn't a continuous line. There was breaks in their history where there was political turmoil. But the 18th dynasty is the one that really arose after the killing of Second Henri Dao II. And Kamosi, one of his relatives, really was responsible for revenging the death of his father, and it's establishing the 18th dynasty. Most of us know that Amenhotep, first, second, third, the fourth Akhenaten, then Tutankhamun, but all of these black pharaohs during that time period. And again, John Henry Clark seems to think that was the time period when you look at the construction, the order that was brought back to the society for most of that time period, and all of that as the height of achievement of the different time periods of order in the 7,000-8,000 year history, of this Nile Valley culture.
Powerful. Switch gears just a little bit, because we know he was lived here in D.C. Tell me something a little bit about your relationship with the late brother Steve Coakley. Ashe.
Ashe, yeah. Steve and I were close. We were friends. Steve, again, I will say that I made a left turn in my life when I hooked up with Brother Rafu at the Jewels of Baton in 1994. All right, because of the bookstore cultural shop any activities that had to do with black folks that anybody was sponsoring, of course, they would put flyers in the store. So Steve was a self-promoter of his lectures that he'd had in various places around the city. So I first met Steve when he came into the shop. We talked a little bit as such, and Steve asked me if I would come and be on the program with him, open up, one of the programs.
Right.
So in several of the lectures that he did here in Washington, D.C., I was, quote unquote, the opening act.
Yes, you were.
Yeah. As such, my whole thing, like as a historian, concentrating on bringing information about different aspects of our history. Steve was the political conspiracy expert, and so his lectures was always about stuff that was going on. And the thing that I guess first really was dramatic to me that Steve presented was this information on the Boule. Again, growing up and not knowing that there's this secret cabal of black folks that exists, that's got their hands in the pot, that's kind of controlling the black community on behalf of the ruling class. Not knowing that was one thing, but hearing this brother talk about it and pointing me towards some things to make me understand I really did understand it, And the year that they had their big conclave in Baltimore, Maryland, I think it was, when everybody went over there, was the year, the irony is that one of the young men that was one of my Cub Scouts, his daddy was the biggest power broker in Arlington County for black folks. All right, whenever something was going on, they would call on, the county board would call on him. It wasn't like there was a community forum, but there were just certain black folks that those folks who controlled Arlington would just call up and talk to, and his daddy was one of those. The fact that I knew him from a little kid growing up, and then seeing him go in here to be inducted into the Boule was an eye-opening experience, which proved the veracity of what Steve was saying. And so as a historian on my own, I did independent research of what Steve was saying and found out that everything he was saying was true, especially about the history of it. Henry Menton and the boys up in Yale, they're forming it. But one of the things that Steve didn't address that I could add to the discussion that a lot of our young folk don't know is before the Boule and before the fraternity movement that grew out of it, because the Boule set up really and established the fraternities and sororities. Before that, the Prince Hall Freemasonry was the status symbols in the segregated black community. Yes, sir.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Because the founding fathers and the folk who basically run and control most of the infrastructure of the country are white Freemasons. Yes, that's right. The parallel group that developed during segregation, what we got, the black Freemasons. It's the Prince Hall Freemasons. Prince Hall Freemasons started for all practical purposes and helped root and put in place the black church as such. Especially the AME Church, where Absalom Jones and Richard Allen, the founders, were also Grand Masters of in Prince Hall Freemasonry. A lot of the early churches that were set up were also Underground Railroad stations, and a lot of the brothers who were helping to run the Underground Railroad stations, a lot of the churches were places where they stopped on, where those that were freeing themselves from captivity, heading north, used Freemasonry and the AME Church to escape to freedom in the north. And in cities like Boston, Philadelphia, and New York, where there was some interaction or intercourse between the white power structure and the black community, more often than not, the white political leaders interacted with the Prince Hall Freemasons as the representatives of the black community. Now, there's a positive and a negative to everything, of course, because again, when people are representing you and they don't consult you, it's just them and their group that's representing you, more often than not, you get sold a bad sale of goods. And unfortunately, at the time of where we are today, I think that would be a statement that is true in some places, and in some other places, because of the Prince Hall Freemasonry and the white Masons who were in the power structure in the small towns and stuff where they were, that a lot less was done to black folks, because some of the white Freemasons took their oath and took their principles of morality very seriously, while others, like most other folks in the white community, were just hypocrites with it. They say one thing, or our old saying that goes way back, that our native brothers taught us from hundreds of years ago, is the white man still speaks with a forked tongue. See, as such. So even though there were white Masons, a lot of white Masons also participated in enabling all of the evil that was heaped upon us during not only the period of our captivity from 1619 to 1865, but the post-captive period from 1865 to 1965. I only stopped there because technically by law, the laws were passed to end the official segregation and to end the official oppression that had been heaped on us for so long. But the flip side of that, and that's where this dispute and all of this righteous indignation being expressed this week by the statements of the owner of the Los Angeles Clippers.
Yeah.
See, a lot of black folks are expressing or pretending like they're surprised or they're shocked that a white person would say something like this or would still think this way about black folks, because of course, the illusion of the brother who lives down at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. See, for the integrationists and the assimilationists, his election was a sign to them that their day had come. They won and the nationalists lost. See, now they are a part of America. Now they are equals. But here in 2014, 6 years into this boy's presidency, what's expressed by this guy to his girlfriend is that racism is as much alive and well today as it's ever been in this country. And the only, like to some degree, it was also funny hearing some of the young brothers evoke the name of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Muhammad Ali or even Tommy Smith and the brothers who raised their hands in Mexico City. It was time for them to stand up and say something or do something, behind this outward expression, of racism, because again, the pretense is that that's now over with. But everyone knows, especially if you are a melanated brother like I am, that in this society, white supremacy is as alive and well today as it's ever been. Yes,
powerful, Tehuti.
Yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah.
So, tell me a little something about what you're doing now. The things that you're involved with.
Okay. Well, right now, the main thing I'm working on is the history of Prince Hall Freemasonry in the District of Columbia. I was asked to come down and help them write that back in 2010. At the time, I wasn't a Freemason. They wanted someone who had a background as a historian to assist one of their writers put together the history of Freemasonry in this city. I have since joined Freemasonry, and for folks who knew me from 25 years ago, that comes as a big shock and a big surprise. But there is, in some things, there's no clear black and white. For me, it was an honor to be asked to join this Grand Lodge here because of its history and interacting on behalf of the people of this jurisdiction in establishing what we call Black Washington, D.C. But right now, so I'm working on writing with them. I'm a member of their Society of Writers, the Phylaxis Society. So I write articles for their magazine. I attend conventions. One of the most dramatic and positive reactions I've had since being in was a lecture and a piece that I did on the Per Imheru, a system of morality veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols. And of course, as most of the people who will see this know, the Per Imheru is the correct name of what's been miscalled the Book of the Dead. In Freemasonry, you go to any dictionary, you go to any website where it is defined, one of the standard definitions they give to themselves is that they are a system of morality veiled in allegory, illustrated by symbols. So I address the content of the Per Imheru from that same perspective, because the Per Imheru, especially when we get to the Judgment Hall in chapter, I think it's 15, where we're talking now, chapter 25, addressing Ma'at and the 42 negative admonitions. What's being addressed is a system of morality. You know, like, I have not stolen. I have not killed with malice. I have not, done all, committed adultery, all of these things, the list of morality. Where that's a system of morality being expressed in that chapter of the book. And if you go further into the book, it also states quite clearly that this information is for those in this life, not just in death. So that also is a hint that this is a system or a code that was addressed and adhered to by a system of persons who had pledged to live their life by that moral code as such. At any rate, the what's called the mystery system of Egypt, for those who were initiated into it again, had to take an oath, and part of that oath is that code of morality expressed in the Per Imheru, or what's called the 42 admonitions of Ma'at. But again, I urge folks who really want to understand that you have to get the entire book, not just Budge's translations, but you have to get all the translations and look and study it to understand. You also get Gerald Massey's Ancient Egypt, Light of the World, because he refers to the ritual in his writing, and every time he's referring to the ritual, he's talking about, again, the Per Imheru, or the Book of the Dead. And so that enabled people to understand how this whole drama that's played out is a ritual. It's not just something that was said or painted on the walls of the tombs for the brothers and sisters who had passed beyond the veil to aid them in their journeys after death.
Talk to me a little something about the Septuagint.
The Septuagint. Okay.
Because, there are some of our family that would say, no sir, Brother Tehuti, the Dead Sea Scrolls are first, you are wrong.
No.
And we have proof that the Dead Sea Scrolls came way before, and there's no way that the Septuagint could have preceded the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Okay, well, with the conquest by the kingdom of Babylon under the leadership of Nebuchadnezzar of the last two Hebrew sectors that was left from the old kingdom of Israel, right? We're talking about Samaria and Judea. That the destruction was complete of these areas. That the people that lived, most of them that lived, some escaped, but were taken into captivity back to Babylon. Basically, and the booty of Samaria and Judea was taken back to Babylon and used by the Babylonians. So these folks were taken back into slavery, like just themselves. They didn't take no documents or anything else with them. After their captivity,
we have some unique things about it.
All right, after they got out,
sometimes more difficult to get along.
What is said
Only humans have sex face to face.
By Philadelphus, the second pharaoh of Egypt, all right, is he called these Jews together and said, it is rumored, or it is said by oral tradition, that you folks used to have a book. All right. All right, that you know, hey. So he told these cats to go to the library in Alexandria and do research and put together, try to reassemble this book. Sometime later, they came back with this book that they presented to Philadelphians about 250 BC called the Septuagint, and that is a written copy of what had been rumored or by oral tradition was supposed to have existed before this time. After this Septuagint is produced, Hebrew or Jewish now scribes came and copied it back into Hebrew. But there is no existing copy of the Torah, the Pentateuch, the books of the prophets, the books of wisdom, the songs and the poetry than the Septuagint. Again, the Jewish Torah, what they call the book of law, the book of instruction, and sometimes called the Pentateuch, the five books of Moses, that's what was supposed to be holy or sacred scripture. The writings of the prophets, the major prophets, the minor prophets, the books of wisdom, the books of poetry, all of those books weren't prayed to or worshipped. All right, as in modern Christianity, and modern Christians worship all these books like they're holy and was written by the hand of God. That wasn't the case then. So there was no assemblage of an Old Testament. The only thing that the rabbis had was the scrolls of the Torah or the Pentateuch. The writings of the prophets and those things wasn't associated with what's called the law, or what was considered holy to them. When they were conquered by Nebuchadnezzar, living there, Nebuchadnezzar destroyed everything. There is no record of him taking back to Babylon with him or his army any copies of the Torah or the Pentateuch. When these people left captivity and came back to the lands, all right, that they had been drugged from, there is no record of them finding a copy of their holy writ as such. So there was the oral tradition that they used to have these things, but there was no hard copy of these things. All right. To try to solve this problem, to some degree, sometimes later, after the king of Khazaria, or the emperor of Khazaria, converted to Judaism in around 754 AD, and he declared that everybody in his kingdom were Jews, right? These Ashkenazis of his empire, right? That these people spent 300 years looking for something concrete to validate what their new beliefs were. And miraculously, sometime between 1000 and 1100 AD, one of their number came up with, he found an ancient copy of this document older than the Septuagint, so that they, as their religion, could have something that preceded it being, what was found in the Nile Valley, as such. In terms of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Nag Hammadi scrolls that were found in Nag Hammadi, Egypt, those that were found buried in the Dead Sea area, fragments of those documents found does contain some of the same stories that's found in the Septuagint, but there is no way of historically dating those documents to be older than the Septuagint. They are ancient. Yeah, they came from back in that time period, stuff written on clay tablets or written on papyrus. But there is no dating mechanism that makes them older. For those people who are believers, they don't know, they just believe. See, they need for these allegations to be true to give themselves some sense of credibility. See, like they don't know what they're saying, but they believe what they're saying is true. They have done no real research on the documents themselves. They have to learn to separate the myth, the folklore, and the tradition of a people from the actual factual history of a people as such. One of the things that plagues modern man is that much of the myth and folklore and what they call the traditions of the ancient world has drifted into the modern world, posing as truths, but they're not truths. See, I don't, like again, it's not the only one. The assemblage of holy documents from various religions are all based on the belief system of the people who adhere to it, that what they have been given and told about these documents are absolutely true. See, it's all belief. In the scale of things, when you are a child, the mentality of all children is that of believers. What they are being given and what have you to eat, how they're being guided by their parents, they have to believe that all of that is in their best interest or what they need to be doing, because they don't know yet. As they accumulate more and more and more information, their knowledge base begins to grow, and they know certain things. See, and the things that they know, they address with more sincerity than the things that they believe. I mean, look at in this society again some of the nonsense we do with our children. When we have our children, we take them through some holidays where we say that they need their beliefs so we can stimulate their imaginations. So they come up with a Santa Claus for Christmas. They come up with an Easter bunny, like for Easter. They come up with a fairy godmother or fairy godfather if you lose a tooth. All of these things, like they be putting on the minds of these children. So when children are trained to, if they say they believe the mythology that they are being given, that they'll get some kind of reward. So as long as the kid believes in Santa Claus, he's got stuff coming at Christmas. As long as the kid is dealing with the Easter bunny, he gets his jelly beans and eggs and all chocolate, at Easter. As long as he's believing in the fairy bringing him a silver dollar when he loses a tooth, he'll get a silver dollar under his pillow. See? So for accepting unfounded beliefs and pretending that it's real, there's a material reward for it. So as children, they grow up thinking that their beliefs are more important than what they know. Even to the degree when they go into their churches where they are told, faith without seeing it, like whatever. I live by faith, not by sight. I don't care that great big tidal wave is coming to drown me. I believe that somebody who was killed is going to come back and save me before I get hit by that wave. Or not knowing or understanding. So people will take, hey, in the years, for example, that this religion that we know today is Christianity, especially Catholic Christianity, in its years while it's forming, right, the original symbol of it is the fish, the sign of Pisces, the Piscean age, a new order. This the Piscean age is what this thing is really about, right? But in order to fool the people, once the Roman state, through Constantine, decides to adopt this and make this the foundation of the new religion for his Roman Empire, he takes the Roman symbol of death and substitute it for the symbol that the original people that was following this figure that was crucified, see, and make that the primary symbol. And so all these people today are running around with a belief system not knowing what they have and how it was put into their religion, like a praying, to the Roman symbol of death, saying that something is holy or divine about it. What? See, what? There's no research. They just accept something that's given down to them symbolically, and they accept it without doing any questioning. because they are told that what they believe is more important than what they know. You know, like, so boom, they don't even know where the word Christ came from. They don't even know how these people were able to substitute the word Christ for what the Hebrew people said they was looking for in a Messiah. Okay. See, all of those kinds of things are all part of the ball of confusion that have our people really in a bad state of mind. Okay.
Boy, this is powerful.
I just want to talk to the folk. I'm not advocating anything except for all of these young, what I call street warriors, these street intellectuals who've gone out and studied a little bit of something, and they want to run back as soon as they think they know something and start arguing and debating with somebody on things that they haven't studied long enough or fully understand. The purpose of becoming enlightened, the purpose of getting educated, right, is to, you know, like, again, come to better understanding, have better wisdom of what happened in the ancient world. Once you know, as in West Africa we say the Sankofa, we look to the back to see what's back, you know, what we've already been through, to know what's the best stuff to bring forward. Not just to get on an ego trip that I'm smarter in my dogma than you are in your dogma. See, and debate about it. That's like young black men with a testosterone problem. You know, like, that's their new way of strutting. They go out there and pretend that they are. And a lot of these guys are very smart, but they're not wise yet. They have some knowledge, but they haven't baked it in time and understanding so that they can be wise with it. So because they have, you know, bits and pieces of a lot of information, they feel good about going up against somebody about what they think they know. I mean, in one sense, I look at it sadly, and in another sense, I look at it almost like a new social phenomenon. At least it has some brothers doing some reading and coming out publicly with what information they have. But see, in addition to an individual reading and coming to think that he's very wise about what he knows, the process of studying where there's real question and answers, there, you know, give and take on the information, where the information is tested. See, the information is tried. See, like, then you are more secure with what you know about it. See, you don't end up in a debate where you ask a question and you end up with your bottom lip dropping open that you can't answer. That's such. See, and again, take a word from one of my mentors, John Henry Clark, from that famous video lecture where he's at a program and he's asked a question, and his answer was, "Yo, I only debate my equals. All others I teach." I think that's what he said.
Yep.
See, as such. And again, if you're saying you're equals and you want to debate each other about having what I call entry-level knowledge about the various subjects that people know, that's not good. Study it. Enter into debate with those who have studied the same things, and try to straighten out the wrinkles in it. Try to patch up the holes in it. You know, try to discover why these gaps are in it. You know, whether you are Moorish, you know, whether you are Hebrew Israelite, you know, whichever of the ancient African legacies that one wants to adhere to. Because, see, my contention is that they were all our ancestors, and we are the heirs to those different legacies. So we can reach back and elevate any one of them if that's what feels best in our own consciousness that we want to do. As such, right? So it's not like being wrong. If a brother wants to go back to the time when the Hebrew Israelites that migrated up out of the Nile Valley were African people, they can go back and deal with that. But they also have to deal with what happened during the race wars. See, like when they were trying to take over the land of Canaan, the Canaanites and all the other tribes that lived there. And then after about 800 years of this warring and interaction, you know, then what these people look like. See, what they considered themselves. See, like, we are dealing with the legacy they started out with. Today, we want to point to that and not look at the legacy of where they were as they progress through that thing. Again, one of the great secrets of the ancient world that's phrased in a term that comes out of the Nile Valley, that you'll see. You're talking about your trip here to D.C. and how it's changed.
Right.
One of the natures of the universe, the nature of you as an individual, the nature of us as a people, the nature of our communities is that they are all ever becoming. Ever becoming. See, nothing stagnates. As such, things are always in a constant state of change. Not just change, but still becoming. If the European science is correct, the universe is expanding at a faster rate than they thought it was. So the universe is not complete yet. It's still expanding. It's still becoming. As such. Even us as people. As I use Martin Luther King as an example. In 1968, when Martin was assassinated, he was a African-American hero, civil rights leader, as such. Okay?
Come on, give me that hug.
Yeah, okay. Now, by the 1980s, Martin Luther King is a brother, the civil rights leader, and also now he has a national holiday, which he didn't have at the moment of his assassination. You know, by 2009, he's a man that has a national memorial down on the mall. So while he is still becoming, all these years after his work with us ended, see, it's just an example of how we are always in a state of becoming. You, me, I'm still becoming. I'm becoming a 70-year-old man. Yeah, with all the aches and pains associated with becoming a senior citizen. As such, I'm still teaching. I will still go on an adventure to learn, because I haven't stagnated yet. You know, like as such. So even our people, the young men that I've noticed, some of them who entered some of those early debates have gone back and are doing some more reading. As such. So they're trying to expand their base of knowledge.
You were talking to me the other day about, you saw one of Polite's videos and you said you like Brother Polite.
Oh yeah, I was impressed. Again, you're hearing, again, thank you for turning me on to him. I think he has a first of all, he's well read. You can tell that by the content of his conversation as such. And he has a well-reasoned way of presenting information. See, and that's impressive.
So yeah, it's June 22nd, Brother Tehuti, with Queen of Four, Taj Tariq Bey, Professor Smalls, Dr. Ray Hagins, and Professor Kaba.
Beautiful.
June 22nd at the National Black Theater.
I think it's an excellent forum. I'm going to put that on my calendar and do the best I can to be in New York. Because I think it's that type of format. See, where brothers are coming with different perspectives to share information, compare and contrast it, and having elder brothers who are also learning in across the board in various subjects. All right, on that, Dr. Smalls, you can't get much better than him. In his knowledge of not just the Nile Valley culture, but West African culture. In the spiritual systems. Ray Hagins, a lot of respect for Dr. Hagins. Again, was with him just a few weeks ago here in D.C. A very important person in terms of one who was once a what I call head over heels, born again evangelical Christian. All right, from the standard Western definition of that, who was then introduced to knowledge of the ancient Nile Valley culture and its symbolism and its spiritual system, and came to a new level of understanding that he had been brainwashed into a dogma, and now he's able to be an enlightened teacher. So I think he's a perfect person for one of the panelists. Dr. Kaba. What can I say about Kaba? He came here for Rafu and I, doing lectures here in D.C. Again, I've known him a long time. I think I ran into him too at a ASCAT conference some years ago. So he's a brother that's been bringing a lot of in-depth knowledge to the community a long, long time. And I know that I know that his heart is in the right place. So like he has no, like again, he's going to give a fair evaluation of what he hears. He has no rock in either camp in terms of, being this way or that. So I think he is a great person. But again, the concept is so beautiful. Again, I tip my hat to Brother Sinetta.
What do you think about, by the way, he's my big brother, but he's your little brother. Do you think, would you say he's a genius?
Sinetta? Yeah, he's probably the first brother, and I hate to say, I don't like using the term street vendor, because that's what he was doing. Right. But it's obvious he was an intelligent brother that was self-employed and taking care of himself. That at the birth of the new media and new media formats, that he was there and saw a way of utilizing it to make it an educational tool and develop a business from it. So I have a lot of respect for the brother and what he's done. Last time I was in New York, I'm sure he won't remember, but I stopped by and hollered at him up there in Harlem. He was out there with his stuff on the street. A lot of respect for the brother.
Beautiful, beautiful. Anything else you want to add, Brother Tehuti? You said a mouthful in a short time.
Well, again, I'm in the, as I said, the sunset chapters, of a long and good life. I have no regrets about anything I've said or done, and one never knows when one approach a certain point how long one is going to be able to continue to contribute. So again, I want to give a word of encouragement again to the youth, the young men who are reading and studying. Don't get sidetracked and just accept the videos, as absolute proof. But really go delve into some books. Where something is footnoted, go look up that reference. Go see what the person really wrote and said. Come to know your subjects that you want to be experts in. Come to know them. But more than anything else, come to know yourself. That ancient adage that over the walls of the Grand Lodge of Wasset, from the ancient of days all the way down to the day is very important. Know yourself. When you know who you are and what you are less likely to be a victim of being a believer in something based on some tradition that somebody else told you about. Know yourself. See, and today, whether one wants to guess about what they are, that's why I told you, we are heirs to all of the ancient legacies. So if a brother who claims to be a Hebrew Israelite were to get a DNA test and finds out that he's a West African, I don't want him to have fear of getting a DNA test to know where he came from, and I don't want him to be fearful of not then being related to, by absolute DNA strain to one of the ancient Hebrew Israelites. So you understand that as a black person who came here through the Mayafa, as such, that we are heirs to all of the ancient legacies, and we can claim a relationship to any one of them. So I'm not criticizing him for not being a blood relative of one of the ancient Hebrew Israelites as such, but that, but come to know, so that as you are progressing a statement or an argument, you'll do it from a position of truth rather than, again, just, from being a confused person. See, as such. I don't claim to have ancient Kemetic blood as such. I decided to study Northeast African history and culture because when I visited there, I found out that what I believed about it wasn't true. Therefore, I wanted to come to know what it was.
All right, now.
As such, that is why I made, that is why I made my last trip there. I wanted to come to know. So, for whichever legacy that they are pursuing, do so, with due speed, as such. But study it and come to know it, as such. And teach young ones so that they can get some of the information earlier. Not just Brother Polite, I'm impressed with the whole movement of what the 5% nation turned out to be. The 5%ers contributed a lot of information. They were introduced to a new way of studying and getting serious about themselves and their information. Made a lot of contributions as such. See, so they're just getting off the regular stream. Find out why so many young black boys, by the time they reach the 3rd grade, you know, 3rd through the 5th grade, why so many of them are turned off by the education system and want to drop out. They're not interested anymore. See, maybe you'll understand, see, that if you're not teaching him who he is, but you're trying to teach him something else, see, like automatically his mind, you know, his nature is saying this is wrong for me. And so instead of blaming him, calling him names, creating some type of psychological condition for his mindset, you know, saying that he's dumb, saying that he's slow. See, put all the blame on the victim, and not knowing what it is about the poison that you're putting into the head of a young man whom, when he took off to go to the 1st grade, you couldn't find no more enthusiastic a person than a young 6-year-old little black boy who's getting out of the house to go somewhere to do something. Yeah, he want to go do something. But within a few years, all of a sudden that experience is no longer positive for him. And what the society hasn't done is analyze, see what they're doing wrong. They keep putting the blame on the victim. But there's a lot of these brothers that end up studying and being spokesmen that's on a lot of these, you know, videos and YouTube things. They're not college graduates. Some of them even ran afoul of the law and got still somewhere and started studying and learning, you know, late, to show that they had a brain and they are intelligent. But somewhere back early in the educational process, something about it attacked them and turned them off. Something attacked their spirit. See, they weren't coming to know who they were. They were coming to be flim-flam into being recreated to be this other thing that we are still fighting. See, back in my day, it was clearer. You know, like here we were young Africans being talked about and addressed in the books and stuff as Negroes or colored people. You know, that ain't us. You know, even though we hear these terms, say like we're not being told about our Africanness, about our natural stuff, not about our nature. See what our real nature is, and if you would allow me to share this with you, you know, like it. Look,
Go ahead, T.
every 30 to 40 years, our youth have changed the culture, very specifically in the area of music and symbolic language. Now, go back to early 1900, when coming out of the 1800s, the standard of music was like ragtime, as such, right? Ragtime and what they call the introduction to early jazz. But after World War I, about 1920, a lot of these young boys, they hadn't gone to college and learned nothing formal. There were no classes in it. But now there's formal jazz that's going on, right? Jazz is an art form that these young folks created out of it with their musical instruments. Years later, when these other younger, like teenage and early 20s, artists came along and added a new flavor, jazz had bebop. But there was no classes nowhere on bebop. How to learn it, you know, what it is and this kind of thing. Not just with the music, but there became their language, a slang that accompanied bebop, and even a clothing style that accompanied the bebop era, as such, right? You move down later on, you know, like to another era, we get to the point where what's called, I'm gonna call it the rock and roll era. Actually, you know, the rhythm and blues era. Especially after World War II. You know, like now the big band music and the revolution in jazz that came in during the early parts of the war, coming out of the war, there's a new flavor. New young folks coming back, and this new thing, this admixture, actually of what they call the rhythm and blues music of black folk. More white folk, because of their association with black folk in the war, are more open to more of the music. So now this blend comes, starting in the early 50s. Bill Haley and the Comets, and like Elvis Presley began to do rock and roll, with just white folks playing black music, all right, as such. But by the 60s, because of the civil rights struggle, here our young folks took the music of the doo-wop era and turned it into the era of consciousness in the 60s. As such, now you got music that's about something. James Brown, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. Like being black, you became part of the culture. Big afros. Every artist they got rid of those processes, and their hair grew out, like all on their own. There was no school, there was no classes on doing this, but it's the nature of our young folk and their inventiveness. And the last one I'll address is the one of your generation that we are witnessing right now. In 1978, 79, when the brothers up in the Bronx, like hooked up something from the outside street thing of breaking and the old black thing of joning on each other, like into hip hop. So here young black kids ain't took no classes nowhere. In fact, they learned from electronics how to sample music and stuff, and just put their lyrics over it. Created their own language, their own clothing style, their own everything, because young black folks, their nature is creative. It is creative energy, and when allowed to develop on its own, it keeps creating and recreating, not under the structure of nobody training it to fit, like to be a square peg to fit in a round hole. See, the American education system are not training African youth to be Africans. They're training them to be African American, with the emphasis on the American part. There's no emphasis on the African part. So, so they create a ball of confusion in their head. And just finally, the last thing, man, again, just going to dealing with our history. Every year, for at least the last 50 years, during Black History Week or Black History Month somewhere, somebody will talk about one of the greatest African agricultural scientists this country ever produced, George Washington Carver. George Washington Carver put out a cookbook, like on 101 things to do with the peanut and the sweet potato. Today there's not one company, not one African American company that's producing peanut butter or producing anything out of the cookbook or anything else. See, like kids, like in an urban center somewhere, you want an after-school program, get George Washington Carver's cookbook and let some of these kids start baking some of those products and perfect them, the right amount of this and that and the other, and start selling, packaging it and selling it. You got social media, you got Twitter, you have Facebook, you can send stuff back and forth across the country advertising your stuff. Start your own business. Be self-employed. Get out of the misguided sense that the only way you can be successful is if the white man gives you a job. That's the same thing as slavery that we always had. It's enough money out on the basketball court for these brothers playing basketball where they can go back and start their own league. They ain't got to work for no racists no more. They got enough millions. They can rent these arenas and have their own thing if they had a sense of who they were and real self-pride. But they'd rather be $1 million, what's the brother write, a $40 million slave than to be, like to think about what they can do to create jobs and development for themselves and their people. See, like out of this thing, I'm at the point of this, and a lot of people are going to be upset with me for saying it. I'm at the point, look, I still support the concept of reparations as such, but not from the same perspective as all these other brothers, thinking that the white man ought to get him some money. We go all the way back to 1998, when the lecture I did up on, Northwest was called The Plan. See, as a collective, as a race, we need a plan. What are we about? And if we're really serious, everybody who thinks alike, why not all move together and at least have one of these territories as an African American state, where you have the structures in place to now create and change and develop for ourselves? Nah. The cats who want it now, we got to integrate into the white man's thing. We have to assimilate to the white man's thing. Here, hey, the white man's ice is colder than ours. when you when you was here, you know, there was still a handful of black-owned restaurants and, you know, like the eateries and what have you.
That's
That,
right.
you know, except for the brothers from the Caribbean, I don't think there's a African American owned anything here. Even Joe's, what is it down at Ben's Chili Bowl? Ben ain't from America. Ben came in from the island. I'm not anti-Ben. I'm not. I mean, I love it. I still go back to Ben's now. Ben goes back to my youth. I'm not anti-Ben's, but we used to have, our brothers came up with a thing in this city that developed it called Wings and Things with mambo sauce. Our own thing, you know, but somehow it's not a Wings and Things left that we own. See, again, we won't even feed ourselves. See, white man come up with, he can put anything in our community. He can come in our community selling green chili, you know, like with Martian cheese on it. And we'd fall for it, and it would be customers, what have you, you know, like, but to set up our own. Now, I was growing up, during the course of the 60s, I know there are at least 100 songs that talked about soul food. Remember that term, soul food? How much we love soul food? You know, black eyed peas, chitlins, hog maws, cornbread and chitlins. What was that boy's name, Joe Cuba? I mean, come on, man. We eat it like, and then they told, well, it was bad food. You know, we was eating chitlins and stuff that was what the white man threw away. But that means we don't know how to cook good food, the good parts of the animals. We don't know how to prepare good vegetables for ourselves. Come on, man, what's wrong? See, like when the spirit of a people is dead, they are walking zombies. And as African Americans, most of us are walking zombies. See, like we are still functional. It's like they call a functional illiterate. We are functional, but we are illiterate to the knowledge of who we are and what we are. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad was on the right path. He laid a lot of truths down. Now, he couldn't tell the whole truth because we are so sick from the spirits of our captivity that all of that information coming at one time would blow most of our minds. So we have to get knowledge in a little bit at a time. So one of the first things he tried to get us to concentrate on is who we were. So get rid of this identity, this false identity that somebody made up during the course of while we were in captivity. Africans got on boats. Africans were brought across the Atlantic Oceans. Africans were put into captivity. Some Africans were then made slaves. You know, Africans got out of slavery. Africans decided to stay. Africans, you know, integrated into this society. For almost 70 years, African had a separate and social economic structure. The African Baseball League was as successful as the white baseball league, so they decided to get rid of it. Brothers said, we can play ball. And, you know, the brothers got together, put up the money, we had a baseball league. Now, you know, the white man ain't going to give me a job. You know, so I'm going to die. I'm going to go out and get in trouble. I'm going to go commit a robbery or do something stupid. Because we haven't learned. See, like if you learn who you are and what you are, the first thing you're going to start doing is then providing for self. So you provide for self. You know, again, you're looking at a brother here, you know, that ain't worked for a white man in over 60 years.
Brother Rafu.
Yes, sir.
That's
He's a brother, you know, not a college graduate, and, you know, got all that stuff, decided to build his own business. Travel all over this country and halfway around the world from his business perspective. We can do for ourselves. But this whole idea again, you know, like, hey, the white man's honey is sweeter. His ice is colder, you know, his lemons are better. It is something, if it comes through him, and you know, hey, his jobs are better for us. I can depend on a white man for a job. See, that's the death sentence. That is an indication of our state of mind. It's what I call the mind of a child to an adult. So when you have your children say, Mommy, Daddy, give me this, give me that. Your 4 or 5 year ain't going out saying, hey, I want a hamburger. I'm going to go out here and start my own business and cook me a hamburger stand. I want a hamburger, Mommy, give it to me. See, children ask adults for stuff. Adults provide for themselves. men sustain for themselves. They don't depend on somebody, you know, like to provide for him. And the fact that we're not providing for ourselves is part of the death knell and the hatred that we have of each other. A young black man will shoot and kill another young black man at the blink of an eye for any offense. Stepped on his shoe, looked at him cross-eyed, you know, whatever. He heard him laughing. He must have been laughing at me. Bow, shoot, kill him. All right, now I'm going to sell the poison in this neighborhood, and if you come up here and I catch you walking down my street, I'm going to kill you, because I protect this neighborhood, and everything in this neighborhood is mine. So so I'm jealously going to protect, like negative enterprises, because that's the only thing I'm good at, being a gangster. For some odd reason, the police don't seem to mind me killing black men, so I'm free to run around all over America, any city. Ain't no task force trying to eliminate me from killing black men. See, if they can get rid of the seed, they'll get rid of the people. See, there you go.
Powerful.
So, hey, man, so, again, be about the real business. Be about really education, not training. Don't train to be a dogmatic something. Don't be don't be, we've had cults develop with brothers, swearing their allegiance to the concept of a cult, not about themselves being educated and uplifted. See, yeah. So, brother, man, it's good seeing you again. Yeah, I hope those brothers up in Syracuse, I know they don't realize where you came from and what you was about before you got up there.
They do now. They do now. This is where I came from.
Hey,
right here. I'm glad to be
there you go. Hey, and again, I'm glad to see you. You work with Brother Sarnetta. I've seen some of your stuff, and I wish you well in developing your expertise at doing this, and doing interviews, gathering information, and making it available also to people. See, that's that's your aspect of being self-employed. The more you think about it, especially with all this new stuff, I'm sure that you can do some more creative things. So I wish you well as you continue to grow.
Thank you, brother. On that note, I want to say peace, Hotep, and Black Power.
Black Power.